Do you have a pet Mindslayer?
Yes, I do. I got it earlier. It's a miniature pet mind slayer.
Oh my goodness.
He was so excited.
It dropped from Scarab. Right. Okay. Good, good, good. All right. We are looking at the Twin Emperors. Everybody should be familiar with this site and have seen it recently. It's an awful long fight. I'm going to kill him real quick, and then I'm going to show you where I stand in the room. So we've got Emperor Veclor on the left, who is a caster, and we pull this one with a Warlock. Warlock should come up to about here, pull, and Warlock is going to run back to here and try to get that thing sort of over on this side of the room. The one over the right is going to be pulled by a Hunter and grabbed by a Warrior tank and pulled over to this wall over here. They have to be separated at all times because if they get close to each other, they heal. Now, each one is immune to the opposite kind of damage, so you can't hit Vecnalash with any kind of spell or magic ability, and Emperor Veclor is immune to physical damage. Now, because Emperor Veclor is immune to physical damage, and this is the tricky part of this fight, is that you tank it with a Warlock. And so you have two tanks on either side of the room. The most important thing in this fight is the transition, getting the transitions correct. Because during the transition, they teleport from one side of the room to the other. So they'll swap places. And you need to make sure that as soon as they're swapped, the other kind of tank grabs them. So let's say that I'm standing here, I'm Warlock tanking this guy, and the teleport happens. You can actually see it happen. There's like a flash that goes underneath their feet, and you'll see, there's a DBM timer that will tell you when it's counted down, so you can watch for it. As soon as that boss switches places with the melee boss, the warrior tank is going to run in and grab that boss and hold it against the wall. On the other side, let's say that Vecnalash has been tanked by the warrior against the wall here. I'm the Warlock. I'm here. As soon as they switch places, the Warlock has to get threat. Now, during this switch, the existing threat drops. But if you've got but existing debuffs do not drop. So you have to do things like drop ignites and make sure that if anything that is a dot is off of those bosses, because if, let's say, I'm over here, I've been attacking a caster boss. I am a Warlock, and I've put corruption up, which I shouldn't do in a raid. The bosses swap. The first thing that happens is that the corruption is going to tick on that boss on the other side of the room. It's going to be my corruption, and that thing's going to come booking it over to me and wipe the raid. So you have to make sure that any kind of a dot ability is not on them. If you're, the mages have to be careful to drop the ignite, because ignite is kind of a non-optional part of their rotation. Now, because we try to tank those bosses in essentially this spot right underneath this torch on either side of the room, there is a sort of a safe zone of locations where people can stand in a semicircle around that thing. That goes kind of like this. Because you don't want to be any closer than that during the transition, because if they swap, the first thing that's going to happen is that there's going to be snap threat against whoever's just standing closest to them. You don't want to be standing so close that they just turn and see you first before either tank is able to establish any threat and kill you. So you have to make sure you're fairly well away from them. Healers. I know that you really, really love to stand over here and bunch up on each other, but you absolutely cannot do that. Healers have to spread out in that semicircle. And you could really get to about here before you start having range problems with the Warlock. You just need to be in range of both the Warlock and the Warrior, but you don't want to stand on top of everybody else. Casters. The same thing applies. Casters don't need to all be stacked up right here on these steps, because more than anything else, you want to give the Warlock tank a wide berth, because the boss drops blizzards. For anybody who has done Fairlina with us, our objective is that if there's a caster at range who's doing an important job, and there's a boss that drops an AoE in the room, you don't want to drop that AoE on the caster doing the important job, because it will kill them. So, casters, feel free to spread out along here too. There's going to be healers spread out as well. You want to make sure that the Warlock has plenty of room. For the melee DPS, melee DPS starts kind of in the middle of the room here and waits for the transitions. When they have to go and find Emperor Vecnalash. So you'll hear a call, melee in. As soon as you hear that call, you'll come on in, you'll DPS the boss until you hear the call, melee out. As soon as you hear melee out, as you're coming across the room, any of these bugs that are aggroed, either that you have aggroed or someone else has, are going to be held by a backup tank, and you have to stop and kill them on the way across the room. This sometimes means that you don't go across the room and actually DPS the boss during that transition. You don't have to DPS the boss during every transition. You have to make sure the bugs are cleaned up. As a corollary to this, on this fight, melee, you do not use any ability that targets more than one target. So no whirlwind, no cleave, no blade flurry, no nothing like that. If it doesn't attack one and only one target, you take it off your bars, because hitting these things will aggro them, and if they move around, they will cause the neutral bugs to become hostile, and you can drag a whole lot of bugs around. Now the problem with this is that because these things only come active in the middle of the fight, they are immediately going to get heal aggro, and they're going to go start killing healers. And if we lose healers, the fight's over. It doesn't matter how much DPS you're doing. So for the melee DPS, this entire fight is about controlling these bugs to the best of their ability and doing DPS when they can. Now, casters, I talked about Ignite earlier. Sometimes you're going to fail to get the Ignite down. It just happens. I wish it didn't. Y'all should be very careful and, drop the Ignite earlier rather than later. Err on the side of too little DPS, because too much and you could die. Because what'll happen is that they'll swap. All of a sudden, the caster boss is in a new spot with no threat. That Ignite ticks once. They look at the mage holding the Ignite, and they run to them and kill them. And then they just keep moving down the target list because they've moved away from the tanks, and it makes it so the tanks cannot necessarily pick up that boss. If you see that the boss moves and you are a DPS of any kind, your job is to stop attacking the boss. You hit your escape key, you move away from that boss, you let the tanks try to reestablish control, you don't touch that boss. DPS only attacks when everything is in perfect position. If it gets out of perfect position, your job is to sit quietly and wait for the tanks to get it right.
Sometimes there are giant bugs to help kill.
Yeah, so that's two other things. The bugs do two other things. Some will become large and they'll just become hostile. They'll attack people and tanks have to tank them. The off tanks will grab them and just hold them in place so that melee DPS can kill them on the way by. The other thing that the bugs do is that they will grow large and they will explode. And you'll see a DBM warning about it. It's worth it to move out of the way. If you are a ranged DPS, your job in that situation is to save yourself. If you're in the middle of a cast, you stop the cast. You move away from the bug. If a blizzard comes near you, you move away from it. Because the thing is that this is a very healing-intensive fight on the tanks. So if you're a DPS, you should just assume that you're not going to get heals in this fight when you need them. You're going to get heals in this fight when the healers have time to heal you. So if you start taking damage, you need to get out of the way and wait until the healers have time to heal you up. Yo, I heard a question.
Yeah, so it's on the exploding bugs. What's the range when they explode?
So they actually do more damage the closer you are. If you get 6 or 7 yards away, you're probably going to take a little bit of damage, but not a ton. If you're standing right on them, you're going to take a shitload of damage. You absolutely have to stop what you're doing and move away from them when you see the warning. Now, when you do see that warning, move in a direction that doesn't stack you on top of everybody else. If you're a mage and you see this bug start becoming an exploding bug, move over here. You don't need to be doing damage all the time. You need to be saving your ass all the time. You don't need to be doing something that threatens everybody else.
So would it stack then if you're near someone? Because as a healer, I do run away from the bug, but there are times where I'm running away where I'm getting near someone else. So can that damage? It's not going to stack, is it?
No, it's an It's just an AOE. You just don't want to go stand on someone else in case a blizzard shows up as the next mechanic.
Right.
Get out of exploding bug whatever way you can. most likely. Try not to go to people, but if you need to.
Yeah, if you need to, but yeah, get away from that exploding bug. Don't take that unnecessary damage. Because if you take damage, it might be 10, 15 seconds before you see a heal, because there are times when the tanks are taking shitloads of damage. One thing with the little bugs that we've noticed lately is that they may not be functioning correctly, because we've had several instances recently where the little bugs came active and started attacking somebody near them who did not attack them first. So
that happened this last week.
Did it happen again? Because it's happened. It's happened to both of us. Okay, so if you're a caster,
healers.
Yeah, if you're a caster or a healer, watch for those bugs. If one of them starts attacking you, you have to say something in Discord to get one of, or like move over here to make sure that those off tanks can grab them. So like, let's say that I'm standing over here and this bug starts attacking me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move closer to the rug. I don't need to move all the way closer because they can move to me. And I'm just going to say bug on Enduras. You want to convey what's going on in as few words as possible and being as clear as possible. I'm not going to say bug on me. Nobody who knows who the hell me is in a raid. Bug on Enduras, because the off tank is going to look up, they're going to see Enduras, and they're going to see there's a bug. They're going to grab that bug. Then you just move back to your position.
It's also helpful to say what side you're on.
Yeah.
And then
There's
second,
just so many things
did
wrong
you
with him.
go over the fact that whatever is said here and instructed to do is what you should do, and you should not be copying others?
Yeah, that's one other thing is that on these fights, and this applies to basically every fight, everybody needs to independently know the mechanics for themselves. You need to know when you need to move, because the person right next to you might need to move at a different time for a different reason. Don't just follow other people. Don't stand on other people. Don't think that you can just imitate what another person does and it's going to be the right thing. You need to independently know. Now, if there is something about one of these fights where you're like, I just follow the person nearest to me when this happens, message me privately. We will discuss what the thing is, and we'll figure out what the actual mechanic is so that you can learn why it matters and what you should be doing independently of other people.
Another thing to keep in mind is, like he mentioned, not putting dots on this particular fight. You might see a warlock tank put a dot on, but the warlock tanks who are allowed to do that have been taught the timing to do that. Same with like if you see bugs, that isn't just because there are bugs doesn't mean it's okay to start whirlwinding and cleaving. Even if you see somebody more experienced do that, it's because they know a specific thing, and unless you've been instructed to do so, don't copy others.
Yeah, and this is one of those times where do as you're told, not what they do matters. Like what you're told is more important than what you see someone else doing. Because Bad Axe knows every mechanic in this fight down to the nth degree. Bad Axe knows exactly when and where he can use a whirlwind when there's too many extra bugs around him. That doesn't mean that a new warrior who is learning this fight should be doing the same thing.
So I'm curious, when he does that, is he's dragging those bugs with him to the next spot that he's going to then?
No, he's not. He does it when he's standing on the boss and there's a bunch of bugs around him that aren't going to be moving for the next 10 seconds. They're trying to avoid doing this because the thing is that it can easily add threat to get onto the tank and kill the tank. You don't want to risk having those extra bugs on there. The only time Bad Axe is doing it is when shit has gone south. It is a thing. It is a thing to avoid having to do.
And again,
I'm a caster.
he's the
You don't have to worry about
that's
me.
done it tons of times.
Yeah.
So.
Right. Yeah.
I was just curious since we got. Yeah, I was trying to avoid confusing people, but
right.
We
want for almost everybody to adhere to best practices. Some of our most veteran players might change their strategies personally when the shit hits the fan, but that does not mean that other people around them should imitate them.
So Enduras Bad Axe will actually, when we're at the boss, will tell us to cleave, but
he sometimes If you're told to do something, do it. If you're not told to do something, do not do it. Single target everything.
Clarifying, if you're told by your class lead or the raid leader to do something, do it. Not just if any random Joe Schmo yells it out.
Right, yeah. You should know who Bad Axe and Summon Station are, and they're the ones, if you've got a cleave on your bar, they're the only ones that are telling you when to use it.
I'm a random Joe Schmo, Jax.
Now, for healers, one thing that is very important on this fight is knowing how to heal the transition. So there's two transitions, obviously, from caster to melee and from melee to caster. When you transition from melee to caster and the warlock is attempting to establish threat, you need to watch both the warlock and the warrior, because oftentimes the boss will get off one or two shadow bolts onto the warrior as the warlock is establishing threat. And you'll know this by watching your threat meter very carefully. If you're a healer and you don't have Threat Classic 2 installed, you need to have it installed. It's a required add-on. You have to have it installed. If you don't have it installed, we will see you not, I'll be able to look at logs and see you not switching targets to heal properly, and I'll know you're not looking at your threat meter. You need to watch for which boss that caster boss is, or which tank that caster boss is targeting from second to second. Because you're going to see one or two of those shadow bolts off and get off on the on the warrior before the warlock establishes threat. You need to be able to keep that caster boss from killing that warrior tank, before the warlock establishes threat, and you need to be switching on to the warlock as soon as that warlock is top of that threat meter, because otherwise the warlock is going to die. Getting that transition right is incredibly important, and you have to get it right. This is one of the few mechanics in the game where you giving your best effort and failing doesn't count. You have to get it right. You have to keep those tanks up. Now, it's much easier going from the caster boss to the melee boss. Your warrior tank is going to walk in. They're going to establish threat on the melee boss. They're going to put their back to the wall. They're probably going to take one really big hit in there, but as long as you started healing that warrior immediately, they're going to be fine. And very rarely do we have a situation where that melee boss runs to the warlock. It happens, and it's bad, but it's a bug. It's not something we can really plan for. Typically, when the warrior moves in, they immediately establish threat because they're not casting spells. They're just going to hit the boss. Does anybody have any questions about the transition?
There is a bug where the caster boss will do that as well.
Yeah.
And it blows, but there's a bug. There's not much we can do about it.
Right, yeah. That's just shit hitting the fan, and everybody has to try to do their best to reestablish, keep the tanks up, possibly res one of them, and just kind of make sure that you don't die in the ensuing chaos.
I have a question.
Does anybody? Yeah, go for it.
Sorry, I can't talk. Last night there was a priest that died.
Sure.
In that instant, if we see that, can a healer just run over and help out, or we have to be told to run over to help out?
Wait to be called, because I don't want three people all thinking to themselves that they need to be the one to go.
Got it.
Yeah, like you heard the call for Dorcas to swap, but otherwise hold your ground.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yep. Yeah, mid-fight like when we're trying to clean up a mess, you'll hear calls for it. Otherwise, just try to keep doing the thing you're supposed to be doing. Because ultimately, the most important thing if shit goes sideways is for 90% of the raid to continue being able to do what they were already assigned to do without dying. So if you're the healer on this left side and shit goes south, you want to be able to continue healing on this side without dying for as long as possible, and don't change what you're doing unless your name is called out. Because we're still relying, if we reestablish the fight, we get the bosses back in position, we get the tanks alive and buffed, we still need everybody on both sides doing what they were originally assigned to do. Does anybody have any more questions about that?
Not a question, but I would like to say that the frost and fire pot resist could very well save your life on that fight. And not just yours, but somebody else's if the healers aren't trying to heal you.
As a ranged, frost is actually really, really good on that fight. The exploding bugs you can move away from, and it's not too bad to get a heal from one of them. But those blizzards kill people. They kill people really badly. And if you're a paladin on this fight, you need to make sure that you are in a frost protection aura. one of the paladins in your group needs to have frost protection up. It is the aura for this fight for paladins.
Do we have any other mages here? That's like the fire and frost are exactly the wards that you have. If you're mages, you can try to keep them.
Right, yeah, I know.
It takes a lot of cognizance to like pop
Yeah.
it because you're not actively you have to keep them up before you get the damage taking. But you do have abilities to be able to take a hit or two from the exploding bug or blizzard, which you will take blizzard damage even if you're doing everything correctly to keep frost ward up.
Right, yeah. The avoiding frost damage is actually more important than fire damage because when you take frost damage, you also get slowed and can potentially then take more frost damage.
But if you're a mage, you blink.
Yeah, you blink,
yes.
or
unless you keyboard turn.
Yeah. I mean, like we have mages die almost every week. We need mages to be a little bit more cognizant of saving their own asses.
frost mages, man. Mana shield, ice block.
Yeah, but okay.
Actually, doesn't do anything against magical damage, but yes.
Any questions about the Twin Emperors? Any more comments before I kill them and go through the hallway of joy? Yeah. So, like, let's say that I'm in group 8. This is the back. I'm in group 8. The melee is going to be right up on the boss at maximum melee range. If you're playing a melee in AQ and Nax, you're going to get used to hearing the phrase maximum melee range often, because it is the place you're supposed to be pretty much all the time, where you want to back up as far as you can while still hitting the boss to make sure that you are not chaining abilities to other people. We try to put, 1 or 2 melee on each mark around the boss, and there are marks on that diagram in that diagram channel that'll show you which ones they are. If you are in a group with another melee, and you're a melee, and they've got a mark, you have to stack directly on top of them. Not near them, not behind them, not in front of them, not one side, directly on top of them. This is a fight where if you don't know how to stack directly on top of somebody, you don't get to do any DPS in phase 1, and otherwise you will kill a bunch of people in the raid. Because during this first phase with this eyeball up, Cthun does a chain lightning at the raid. It will target somebody, it will hit them with a chain lightning, it'll bounce from them to any number of other people who are within 10 yards of them, and if it hits more than 2 people, everybody after those 2 will die. It can kill the entire raid all at once.
I got a question.
Yo.
What does the mark look like? Can you tell?
So let's like the mark that you stack on.
I thought you said that someone gets a mark on them from the boss, like a
No. They'll get a mark on them from the raid leader. So, like, if I'm in group 1...
Yeah, I understand now.
Yes, so you need to be stacking directly on top of your mark. If you see Mini Mindslayer, I love Mini Mindslayer. Mini Mindslayer is not stacked correctly. That's a bad stack, Mini Mindslayer. How dare you?
Bastard.
I am now stacked on Mini Mindslayer. This is useful. Mini Mindslayer has moved and has screwed me over. Mini Mindslayer is going to get people killed. This is a perfect stack right here. It's the only way to be stacked. Now, if you... And you have to make sure to be exactly in your position because you can't be too close to another stack of marks or else all of you are going to die and the raid leader is going to be annoyed. Considering that our raid leaders are melee, if you kill them, they're going to be extra pissed at you. So, it's very, very important to be 100% precise. If, by some chance, and it's fine, you wander in, you get there, and you are not comfortable stacking on your mark, and you're a melee, the thing you do is you turn around, you go over here. You go stand against the wall, as far away from everything as you can, and you wait. You just don't do anything. On Cthun, it is more important to be standing in the right spot and doing nothing than to be standing on the wrong spot and doing anything. You only get to DPS if your stacking is perfect as a melee. If it's not, you go stand against the back wall and you wait. And that's fine. We have people that are new who it's going to take a few tries before they really figure out this fight. It's a hard fight. If you say, I'm not comfortable stacking, I just can't get it right, I don't know where my mark is, I don't know where I'm supposed to be stacking, if you're not completely certain that you're in the right spot, your right spot is against the wall. You wait until you get this fight down before you start putting other people at risk. Now, if you are a ranged or healer, you are going to be in that quadrant of the room behind the mark in your party, somewhere between them and the wall, at least 10 yards from every other player. Now, you don't necessarily have to be in range of anything. Let's say that I'm a DPS and there's people up here for some reason. I'm going to go stand way back here. Oh, look, I can't attack the boss. I am too far away from the boss. Doesn't matter. If you're a ranged DPS and the only way to be standing in a safe spot is to be doing no DPS to the boss, your job is to do no DPS to the boss. You only do DPS to the boss if you're in the perfect position. Now, what's important here is that you don't start wandering around. Let's say that you move in here and you realize, oh shit, oh he saw me. There's that beam. It's not going to kill me. And you realize, oh shit, I ran into the wrong side of the room. You do not go to your side of the room. Ever. You do not. You go to the wall. If you've messed up your position, it's fine. You just go to the wall and you wait for the next I-beam. When I say by I-beam, you'll see it. It'll be a dark glare that turns into a giant beam. And hopefully he actually does it. You see it, and that's when you can reposition. During this phase, when he's casting I-beam all over the place, you don't go within 10 yards of anybody for any reason. Any reason. There's no reason. You are either 10 yards away from people or you are wrong. Now, you notice these claw tentacles popping up. If you're a ranged DPS in particular, you gotta kill those things when they pop up. Eye tentacles. People have to... Oh, there's the dark glare. If you notice, dark glare comes up periodically, and it goes in a 180 around the room, either clockwise or counterclockwise. You have to stay out of it. If it touches you, you die. I don't necessarily think it'll kill me. Kind of does. And what we do is we reposition to the complete opposite side of the room. We move 180 degrees from our original position, and we reform the same sort of stacks and spacing as before. As you're moving, ranged DPS kill the eye tentacles, and melee DPS stay on the Eye of Cthun to try to get it down. Now, if for some reason... Yep.
Sorry, you said move 180 degrees away from the I-beam?
No, you move 180 degrees around the circle. So let's say this is the first place on the mini-map that I was stacking. This is where my group was originally. You're going to rotate around and end up over here. Because the I-beam moves 180 degrees. Does that make sense?
Yeah, do a semicircle.
Yeah, 180 degrees, semicircle around the boss. You're going to flip positions because you're essentially just going to run in the same direction as the dark glare and avoid being killed by the dark glare. That's your whole goal during that phase. Now, if you're melee and you notice that those eye tentacles aren't going down fast enough, it's actually much more important for those things to die than for Cthun to die quicker, because they will just start killing your ranged and healers. So be cognizant of them. It's someone else's job, but if that job isn't getting done, it becomes your job. We have to get them down. Does anybody have any questions about this phase? Because there's another phase of this fight. See, here comes a dark glare that's coming the other direction.
So the I-beams and the claws.
The eye tentacles and the claws, you mean?
On those? Yeah.
So the eye tentacles periodically come up, and they all do a mind flay on a random person in the raid. So it's like 10 maybe eye tentacles. And all of them target a different player and cast Mind Flay on them, which slows them and does a shitload of damage. So they have to die immediately. If you're near an eye tentacle that comes up, you have to kill it. If you're near a claw tentacle that comes up and you see it, you have to kill it.
Did you go over, when we're running into the room, what puts you on the boss's threat table?
Yeah, the boss saw me, so I didn't get to do that. So, as we're running into this room, when we first do the run-in, it's actually going to be a hunter that runs in first. And the hunter's going to run in because that I-beam that keeps going out, it's very dangerous at the beginning of the fight when everybody is all clumped up running into the room. And so you want it to only target the hunter who's way ahead of everybody else. The only way to control that it is only going to target the hunter is for the hunter to be the only person on the boss's threat table. Now, the way that you solve this is that when you run into the room, the only thing you do is walk. You don't cast any abilities. You do not use anything out of that would be an ability you see in a spell book. No putting on an aura. No using a potion. No bloodthirsting. No casting spells. No using abilities. No blinking. No nothing like that at all. You walk to your spot in the room and wait for everybody to be in position before you touch any button other than walking. Does anybody have any questions about things that qualify as walking or not?
I've got a different question.
Sure.
So, you say kill the eye beams and the eye tentacles and claw tentacles.
Yes.
So that would sometimes require moving away from being stacked on your mark. Is there any time when we shouldn't move off of our mark to kill a tentacle?
You generally won't have to in that phase because when the claw tentacles pop up, the range should be able to get them down. If for some reason a claw tentacle pops up like in the melee and knocks you away, you want to immediately move away from the other melee, kill that claw tentacle away from the other melee, and then move back into your position. So if for some reason you feel the need to move away from your mark when you're in melee, the only way to do it is to turn directly backwards and walk directly away from the boss. You never want to walk sideways while you're next to that boss, ever. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So like, let me show you. Like, let's say that I'm in maximum melee range. Gosh, stupid. Like right here. And something compels me to move away from the boss. I turn completely away from the boss and walk out. I don't try to like strafe sideways or anything like that. I turn around directly facing away from the boss and I walk out. So that I never actually get any closer to any of the other melee groups. Does that make sense about how to do that?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm just taking notes.
Yep. Now, we repeat all of this until the Eye of Cthun goes down to 0. I'm going to finally kill the damn thing. Alright. Unfortunately, there's a ton of these things around still. Alright, and then, finally, Ugly Cthun here pops back up. Now, at this point, we are going to all go to the doorway where we came in and sort of loosely stack on those stairs. I'm just trying to kill... Oh, I'm going in the stomach. We stay over near those stairs. People will periodically be pulled underneath here, where you see these two flesh tentacles. If you are a DPS or a tank, you can stay down here and you can attack them. When both of them die, I'll tell you what happens. If you're a healer, the first you get right on that little platform that I got on and get knocked up out of there. Healers do not stay in there for any reason at all. Melee attacks that thing. You will have a stacking debuff while you're inside there. You'll see it in a second. See the stacking debuff of digestive acid. If you're a melee or if you're a DPS and you're down here attacking, you really don't want to let that get higher than 5 stacks. If you see it going up, because it'll just kill you down here. And if you die down here, you're just dead down here and you're useless to us. When you've got 5 stacks, you move directly into the middle of this little thing and it'll pop you out. And then immediately get back towards this doorway over here, back at the south end of the room.
I'll add this to really quick end. If you're in there, because you're going to be in there with other players, right? If you see somebody that's taking that little launcher thing right before you, wait a second before you go in there, because if it happens to go off as you're running in, you'll get launched up and you'll hit the ceiling and you won't actually leave and you'll just drop and die. So wait a second.
Say that again, please.
So if you happen to be in there and you're trying to go take that little launcher to get out of Cthulhu's stomach, if there's somebody using it like directly before you, and you can't get to the middle in time, you'll get launched up and you'll hit the ceiling rather than actually making it out of stomach. I don't know if N can show it. He can try to like.
No, it's happened to me before. Yeah. That's why, and I always wondered what happened. I
so I trigger it, and let's say I'm over here. No, it didn't happen that
didn't
time.
work, but yeah, if you were a little late on that actual like entrance to that, there's a chance that you'll get launched up and you'll hit the ceiling, and you won't actually get pushed out of Cthulhu's stomach at all, and you'll just hit the ceiling and you'll plummet to your death, and then you're fucked. So just be mindful of that.
The launcher isn't player specific. It's just a mechanic that's dealt with the launcher there. And so anybody standing near it gets hit by that mechanic, whether they're the person that actually stood in the circle first or not. So you want to make sure that if this thing's going off, you're directly in the middle. Now, two people can use it.
Okay, thank you.
Two people can use it at the same time, but they have to be moving onto that circle basically at the same time.
So you said once you get out of there, go to the door?
Go to the door, to the south end of the room where those stairs are, the narrower stairs. Because that's where you'll go. You essentially go and you stack back up kind of with where the rest of the raid is. And the reason why is that up above here, and hopefully I can actually show it, periodically these giant claw tentacles and giant like eye tentacles pop up, but they pop up where a player is standing. And so you want to make sure that they pop up near the raid so the raid can deal with them. Because if nobody deals with them, they just start killing the raid. You can't be off by yourself in this room at all. You have to be near the rest of the raid at all times. During phase 2, during this phase. Now, you have two kinds of tentacles that pop up. The first ones are giant claw tentacles. They look like these flesh tentacles. Tanks grab them. They hit really hard. If you're not a tank, absolutely don't be the first person in, because it will one-shot you. If, once the tank has established threat, you can attack it. The other is going to be a giant eye tentacle. And on this one, it'll do its own chain lightning, kind of like the eye beam in the first phase, that you can interrupt. If no one interrupts it, it's going to kill a dozen people. So when the giant eye tentacle pops up, if you're somebody who has an interrupt ability, you need to make sure that it is available for those interrupts. And you'll see the ability. It's the only ability it uses. So like, let's say I'm a rogue, and the giant eye tentacle pops up. I walk over to the giant eye tentacle. I start auto-attacking. I don't do anything to put my kick on cooldown. I wait until that ability starts. I kick it, and then I can use my abilities again until kick is off cooldown. Because you can't let that thing go off at all. Now, because of the way that these eye tentacles pop up, these with the mind flay, when they do, the melee is responsible for killing the near ones, and the ranged all have to go and kill the far ones. So if you're a ranged DPS, you have to move over to where you can reach those back ones, kill them, and then move back to... Oh, I died! And then move back to move back to the stairs at the bottom of the room where everybody's grouped, because you don't want the next set to come up and drop an eye tentacle or a claw tentacle where you are. I gotta go all the way back. Now the two tentacles down below, when you kill both of them, Cthun goes into a vulnerability phase. During the rest of the fight, Cthun is essentially invulnerable. You take 9% reduced damage. So you can only kill him during a vulnerable phase. What this means is that it's possible...
Can you transport to the final chamber?
I don't think so, because I didn't kill Oro. Let's find out, but I don't think so. It's important if you're down below and you're killing those tentacles that you don't kill... Oh, maybe I can. Hold on. Oh, no, I did kill the Twin Emperors, so I can go here. Thank you. It is important not to kill the second tentacle unless it is called for. The raid leader will call for it. They might say, okay, down there, such and such is down in the stomach. Hold and wait until I tell you to kill the last tentacle. This is when you get it down to like 10 or 15%. And if you're down there and that last tentacle is at 10 or 50%, you hold on, you wait a minute, because we need to make sure that all of those tentacles up above are killed and that no more are going to spawn before you can actually finish killing off that flesh tentacle down below. Because we want to make sure that when Cthulhu goes into vulnerability phase, that we're not dealing with any other bullshit up top. Because we have a limited amount of time to do actual damage to Cthulhu, and we need to make sure we maximize that time. Does anyone have any questions about how that works real quick? Now, if you're down there and they say hold DPS and you are approaching 5 stacks, you don't have to stay. You save yourself, get out. Someone else will be going down there. It's fine. As long like this is a fight where your primary goal is don't get yourself killed, don't get anybody else killed. We can last forever doing this fight if nobody dies. We can wait for the perfect moment if we have to. Sam, do you have any more to add on flesh tentacles and the vulnerability?
No, I mean a little bit. So the one thing that was kind of just missed with Enduras' explanation, which was great by the way, good job, End. The one thing is when those eye tentacles, so you're going to have different waves of eye tentacles spawning and those claw tentacles spawning. Along with those waves, those small little eyes that you guys were seeing are going to pop up as well. If you're a melee, your priority is always going to be those close ones first. Those have to go down before you start DPSing one of the like the eye tentacle or the claw tentacle. If you're a caster, your prio is going to be on the further side, right? And I know Enduras was talking about how it's important that rogues need to be there to interrupt. That's true, but you guys' priority is still going to be, or not priority, but you guys should still be focusing on those eyes, just for the fact that those are going to do a lot of damage if they're not actually killed. Ideally, you're going to have tanks that are shield blocking or pummeling or something along those lines when those claw tentacles come out originally to help interrupt the first one or two while you guys are killing those. But just keep your head on a swivel. If you're close to the tentacle when you're killing those eyes, and you see that it can get interrupted, just interrupt it. But you just kind of have to play it by ear. Just kind of watch what happens. But don't skip out on those small little tentacles that spawn as well. Those are very important.
Yes, thank you.
I have an odd question actually regarding the claws.
Okay.
Can you dictate when or where they spawn? Is it just totally random? Because it seems like
you mean the giant claws or the small claws?
The smaller claws, not because it seems like I'm constantly getting hit by those, and I'm wondering if I'm just standing.
No, they do that to piss you off. That's the way they work.
Okay, then it's working.
Yes, that's working as intended. It's annoying.
Could I mention something about the run-in?
Sure.
So we have the way the groups are. You can get to, if you're in a group close to the door, you could get to your starting position before the people on the far side of the room. And just because you're in your starting position doesn't mean you should start casting or healing until everybody's really in their position. Twice last week, I believe, other people got to their starting position and started casting, and it caused a lot of deaths. You know, there should really be that call out for when shit starts happening.
I'd agree, because this fight's really a marathon, not a race.
Well, move your position. Yeah.
Technically, marathons are races. Just saying.
I know, that's why I said sprint last.
It's definitely a fight where it tests your ability to be patient and look at the room. Like this fight punishes people who tunnel vision, and it punishes people who are impatient. You need to run in, walk to your position, turn, and look at the whole room and see if everybody else is in their position, and that's when you're safe to start doing stuff. It's about making sure that everybody's in position before you do stuff. Does anyone have any questions on that? Okay. Well, the last thing I'll reiterate is just make sure if you are not comfortable with your positioning in phase 1, the wall is always your position. It's always safe. And more importantly, no one is going to think badly of you if you have to go to the wall because you are not comfortable with your position. This is a really hard fight. Like, that's a perfectly normal thing to happen to people. We have good players be like, oh, someone is in my spot. I don't know where there's a safe spot. I'm going to go to where I know is safe, and I'm just going to wait. Because that's a much better thing than to try to force it and be like, oh no, I have to get into a spot and start doing DPS, or something bad will happen. Nothing bad will happen if you're just standing in the back being patient and not getting anybody killed. That's actually an incredibly heads-up play.
I'll say this too, that fight got significantly harder once they took away the DBM rangefinder option. However, there are still options for you to get essentially a rangefinder. It's just kind of a shitty version of it. There's weak auras that you actually download that if you click on somebody, it'll tell you the range from them. I recommend it. It's not as convenient as the actual rangefinder that you get on DBM, but it still tells you if you're within 10 yards of somebody if you click on them. So if somebody looks a little close, you can click and it says, hey, this person is, less than 10 yards away from me. I need to move a little bit to my left or to my right. And just one step to your left and to your right could be the difference between a wipe and a kill. So it's very important that you watch that 10 yards throughout this entire fight.
I do a ton of time during that fight just turning around and making sure that I'm in the right spot and not actually doing anything else. Because the thing is, in that first phase, there's not a ton of damage going out. The damage that's dangerous in that first phase is the I-beam. That's it. That's the only thing that matters. One thing that I will note also is that when you see the ability Dark Glare start, it'll say something like Cthun is looking at you. The moment that emote goes off, the I-beams won't go out anymore. So if you need to move to get out of the way of that eye where it's going to start that Dark Glare beam, you can move then. And it doesn't matter who you're stacked on at that moment. Once the emote starts. Do we have any more questions? All right, well then we will wrap this up.